In the US, there's a strange feeling you can't fully capture with one chart. You drive through one neighborhood and everything looks richer than ever. Fresh paint on the buildings, clean sidewalks, new coffee shops with long brunch lines, brighter storefronts, nicer cars. Even the vibe feels expensive. Then you take one turn, just a couple of streets, and it's a different country. For lease, taped to the glass. A pharmacy that used to be busy, now empty. A store closing sign that looks almost polite. A parking lot with too many open spaces. And a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like life is slowly stepping back. That's the paradox. Why do some places look richer at the exact moment most people say life is getting harder? Why does the rich picture get brighter while the feeling of pressure spreads everywhere? Because the U.S. is starting to move at two speeds, and that's not a metaphor. It's what happens when money, services, and stability stop flowing evenly. Most people want one clean explanation. One villain. One big cause that ties everything together. But this isn't a single hit. It's a system quietly rerouting the flow of money, convenience, safety, and jobs, and not every zip code gets the same outcome. So in one place you see growth and a new normal. In another, you see a slow contraction that doesn't make headlines. And the most dangerous part is that it doesn't look like a crisis. It looks like lighting. Bright here, dim there. And you get used to it until you realize you're living in a different world. Let's start with the simplest scene almost anyone recognizes. It's Sunday night. You open your banking app. Your paycheck hit. For a second, you feel that tiny wave of relief. Then you scroll, and you see it. Auto pay, insurance, utilities, rent or mortgage, car payment, phone bill, child care, subscriptions you keep meaning to cancel, but somehow they're still there because they're holding up a little piece of your normal life. And then comes a small notification. Your payment increased. Not double, not dramatic, just higher. Enough to trigger the same thought. Okay, it's tight again this month. That right there is the key. People assume rich neighborhoods look richer because rich people live there. Sure, partially. But the deeper reason is this. When most people lose margin, any place that still has margin starts to glow. Margin isn't luxury. Margin is freedom. It's the ability to make a mistake without panic. It's the ability to say yes without doing math first. It's the ability to solve a problem with money or time because you still have both. When margin exists, an unexpected bill is annoying. When margin disappears, an unexpected bill changes the month. You don't just pay it. You reshuffle everything. You delay something else. You move money off a credit card. You tell yourself, we'll deal with it later. And when millions of households live like that, the economy can look fine in reports while becoming fragile in real life. Now, here's where rich neighborhoods come in. A rich neighborhood isn't just expensive houses. It's the infrastructure of low friction. You're paying for speed, cleanliness, reliable service, walkability, safe routines, schools that don't feel like a gamble, streets that get fixed fast, businesses that stay open, and in years like this, control becomes the most expensive product in the U.S. People don't necessarily want luxury. They want predictability. They want fewer surprises. They want to stop feeling like one random expense could knock them sideways. So, places where predictability can be bought start attracting money, businesses, and attention. Like magnets. Now, look at what happens on the other side, where margin is disappearing. Those neighborhoods aren't worse people. They're not suddenly making bad choices. They're just losing the resource needed to live a little freely. And that a little freely is what keeps a normal neighborhood economy alive. The small purchases, the casual stops, the let's grab something moments, the quick service calls, the impulse coffee, the dinner because you're tired, the delivery because you don't have energy. When that little extra disappears, the economy doesn't explode. It just gets quieter. Quieter parking lots, quieter sidewalks, quieter storefronts, quieter life. And you can literally read it on the glass. Not always a bankruptcy headline, just for lease. This is why this story matters. We're not doing fear content. We're breaking down the mechanism. Why some neighborhoods shine while others quietly empty out. And we're doing it step by step. First, how money flows and why businesses choose certain streets. Then, housing as a filter that turns neighborhoods into a club. Then, the job market, where you don't need mass unemployment to make people afraid. And finally, how it changes cities, services, safety, migration, and that feeling that the country is different even within the same state. Because the strangest thing is that this isn't hiding in reports. It's one turn away, and it usually starts with something that looks harmless. A storefront. A normal neighborhood notices a small change first. A place you've used for years is gone. And a storefront isn't just a storefront. It's a thermometer. When it starts reading colder, it's rarely one reason. It's usually the sign that money began to move differently. Let's be honest, corporations don't close stores because the U.S. is bad. They close stores because a specific location stopped hitting what they consider normal. Traffic, average receipts, predictability, low loss, low conflict. That's where the first piece of the rich neighborhood paradox begins. In affluent neighborhoods, businesses get three things that become almost rare in 2026. First, stable demand. Even if life got more expensive for everyone, some households still have margin. And margin fuels modern retail. Coffee on the way. Dinner because you're exhausted. Delivery because your time matters. Services because you'd rather pay than spend energy. That's not showing off. That's wealth as a buffer. Second, lower operational risk. Less stress often means fewer problems, fewer losses, fewer incidents, fewer unpredictable situations. And for business, that's math. Insurance, shrink, staff turnover, security, complaints, damage, all of that is cost. When your margin is thinner, you go where fewer extra costs happen. Third, dense, high-value foot traffic. The kind of traffic that's not just driving past. People walk, people stop, people browse, people live in I can go in mode, and I can go in is gold. Because a huge amount of profit isn't made on big planned purchases. It's made on small, frequent decisions. Now compare that to a neighborhood where margin is fading. People don't start saving through drama. They save through micro decisions. This month, coffee at home. Let's wait for discounts. No delivery, we'll cook. We'll tolerate it another month. We'll do it ourselves. Every decision is rational. But when it becomes massive, the neighborhood loses what makes it feel alive. Circulation of money. First, the nice little things disappear. The cafe, the small boutique, the local service. Then mid-tier businesses struggle, and eventually you're left with survival formats. Discount stores, pawn, basic, cheap grocery, anything that works when people are only buying necessity. Important point. The U.S. isn't emptying out evenly. Specific zones are. So a rich street can look brighter simply because nearby streets are fading. Same country, different speed. Now add another detail people underestimate. When a neighborhood loses stores, it loses convenience. And convenience is currency. Convenience saves time, saves gas, saves energy. When convenience disappears, people drive farther. Sounds small until going to the store becomes a plan. An hour, extra fuel, extra stress. And in 2026, people aren't only saving money, they're saving energy. When energy drops, people cut extra trips. They stop stopping by. They stop walking without a goal. Less movement, less life. Meanwhile, rich neighborhoods sell convenience at walking distance. Faster, closer, smoother, you can solve problems in 15 minutes instead of losing half a day, and that's why even people who aren't ultra-rich try to reach those places. Not because they want luxury, but because they want less daily friction. Less friction equals less fatigue equals better life. And that's why you see the weird picture. A new coffee shop and a Pilates studio opening in one area, while a normal pharmacy and a clothing store close in another. Not because the people are different, because in one place people are still buying comfort. In the other, they're already buying survival. Now we have to talk about housing, because housing makes this divide almost inevitable. Expensive neighborhoods get more expensive not just because they're nice. In uncertainty, people pay for the guarantee. They pay for the feeling that the school will be okay, the street will be lit, services will work, response times will be decent, the neighborhood will hold value, the area will stay stable. That's the club. And the ticket is rent or a home price. Now look at the rest of the U.S. mortgage rates can dip, but affordability doesn't magically return. Because affordability isn't one number. It's the combo of home price, payment, taxes, insurance, repairs, and income confidence. And here's the trap. When the future feels less secure, people don't want a heavy anchor. So many stay renting or waiting. But rent in the predictable zones stays high because demand keeps pressing there. People want less friction, less stress, more stability. So the country splits. Some areas become magnets for those who can pay for peace of mind. Others become places where those who can't buy predictability remain and feel more pressure as the area dries out. That's not pretty, but that's how the filter works. When the entry price rises, the neighborhood composition changes, and then everything changes with it. Business, services, safety, culture, behavior. Now add work because someone will say, if it was really bad, we'd see mass unemployment. But the key in 2026 is this. You don't need mass unemployment to make the U.S. feel fragile. You just need three things. Hiring gets harder. More interview rounds, more delays, more position paused, mobility drops. People change jobs less even when they're unhappy. Fear of mistakes rises. People avoid steps they used to take calmly. And that connects directly to the rich neighborhood paradox. When the market gets jittery, people value safe environments. They stop taking risks. They choose places with better schools, fewer problems, more options. Those who can move, do. Those who can't, stay and feel the pressure compound as their area loses services. So rich neighborhoods don't look richer because they print money. They look richer because capital, business attention, and people who can pay for predictability concentrate there. Now, let's make it visual again. This is how the decline usually feels in a normal neighborhood. First, you notice your favorite place reduced its hours. Then, lines get longer because there's one cashier. Then, service gets rougher because staff is exhausted. Then, prices climb faster because businesses are trying to survive on less turnover. And then, a psychological shift hits. People go out less. Not because they're lazy. Because going out has become expensive in money and nerves. Less going out means less traffic. Less traffic means less money. Less money means worse service. Worse service means even less desire to go out. It's a loop. Quiet, slow, easy to miss until you realize normality already left. Now zoom out to the city level. A city isn't buildings. A city is service. Lights, roads, trash pickup, schools, parks, repairs, response time, and all of that costs money. Where does city money come from? Activity, taxes, sales, business turnover, real estate transactions, permits, fees. So when a neighborhood quietly empties, fewer stores means fewer sales and less tax. Less traffic means less business and fewer work hours. Fewer work hours means less stability. At first, you don't see it because local government does what households do. It goes into maintenance mode. No dramatic announcement, just delays, postponed repairs, hiring freezes, merged departments, reduced hours. Everything still works, but worse. Everything still exists, but slower. And that's when rich neighborhoods can look even richer. Activity falls less there, tax base is stronger, it's easier to maintain quality. While in weaker areas, every delay becomes visible because everything was already running thin. People don't measure this by statistics. They measure it by daily feeling. Is it lit at night? Is it clean? Are things repaired fast? Do services respond? Do schools feel stable? When those answers gradually worsen, people say one sentence everywhere. This place feels different now. That different is dangerous because it's not one number. It's trust. And here we reach the most uncomfortable part of two-speed USA. Rich neighborhoods start to feel like safe havens, and other neighborhoods start to feel like risk zones. We have to be careful with the word safety. It's complex. It depends on stats, media, visibility, density, culture, policing, 1,000 factors. But one thing is almost always consistent. When margin disappears and stress rises, friction rises too. Not always a crime explosion. Sometimes it's more minor conflicts, more theft of small things, more vandalism, more tension, more chaos in the air. Business reacts fast. If a neighborhood feels riskier, prices go up to cover it, or businesses leave. If businesses leave, the area gets less lively. If it's less lively, it feels riskier. Loop again. Rich neighborhoods often get the opposite loop. More security measures, more resources, more political will to keep quality high. That reinforces the safe haven feeling even more. This is where the big change of 2026 really forms. People start treating the U.S. like a menu, but not by ideology. By three factors: cost of living, safety and environment quality, availability of work. Migration looks less like escape and more like excel. Rent or mortgage, taxes, car insurance, home insurance, utilities, childcare, gas, distance, schools. People don't migrate to richer places. They migrate to a place where they can run their budget without constant anxiety. And that creates another paradox. Sometimes people leave an expensive, successful state not because it's bad, but because it's too expensive to stay calm there. So yes, you can have fatigue everywhere and still see new restaurants and boutiques in certain zones, because those zones become a rare human asset. Predictable living. Money flows where risk is lower. Business flows where loss is lower. Service flows where people can pay. People flow where life feels controllable. From the outside, it looks like prosperity. But often, it isn't prosperity. It's concentration, like water leaving dry soil and gathering in one place. That place looks greener, not because it gained magic, because everything else got drier. The most dangerous part of this story isn't store closures or mortgage rates. It's the loss of movement. In a healthy system, people feel they can move up. They can change jobs. They can relocate. They can restart. They can make a mistake and recover. When that feeling disappears, people feel stuck. And stuck is fuel for everything: irritation, fatigue, distrust, anger, apathy. You can endure a lot if you see a path forward, but when the path disappears, pressure turns into a cage. So here's the point: clean and honest. The rich neighborhood paradox isn't about envy, and it isn't moral judgment. It's mechanics. When the system becomes less predictable, money and people behave the same way. They move toward lower risk. And rich neighborhoods start to look richer not because the country is improving, but because the country is becoming more uneven. It's like the light in a room didn't get brighter. It just shifted. One corner is warm and bright. New cars, new storefronts, new services. The other corner is dimmer. Fewer services, more empty units, more we're on our own. And the difference shows up first not in numbers, but in rhythm. How fast roads get fixed. How long for lease sits. How tired people look. How conversations change. Less we're planning and more we're managing. Because the real gap isn't only income. It's the margin of life. Some still have it: time, energy, buffer, room to be human. others don't. Every deviation becomes a problem, every decision feels risky, every later becomes debt. That's why elite zones grow. Not as a celebration, as a concentration. The system gathers those who can pay for predictability and makes those places even more protected. Meanwhile, the rest stays in a crowded economy where nothing explodes, it just wears down. So here's the question that ends this story honestly. If rich neighborhoods become safe havens, what happens to everyone else? They don't just lose stores, they lose movement. And when a society loses movement, it changes faster than headlines can explain. That's the main takeaway. The U.S. isn't collapsing in one day. It's reorganizing at 2 speeds. If you want to understand what happens next, don't just watch the loud news. Watch where predictability appears and where it disappears. Write in the comments. Do you see it where you live? Is your neighborhood getting brighter or quieter? What changed the most? Housing, services, safety, or work? And if you want the next chapter, we'll break down why rich areas can look richer even when the economy seems normal. The mechanics of hidden subsidies, insurance, taxes, infrastructure, credit, and how they lock in to Speed USA. Subscribe so you don't miss it.